Sure. My name is Melissa Willard-Foster. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Vermont in Burlington, Vermont. Well, I just finished a book manuscript on the causes of foreign-imposed regime change. In it, I look at the question of why major powers in particular, because they're the most frequent interveners in terms of imposing regime change, why they pursue a policy of regime change, which doesn't necessarily mean military invasion. Regime change can happen in lots of ways. Why they pursue that policy as opposed to using coercive tactics or even inducement tactics, positive inducement such as foreign aid, to change the policies of foreign governments. That is, why do they seek to change policymakers as a way to change policy rather than coercing the policymakers or inducing the policymakers who are already there? Today I'll be presenting on an idea that actually came to me when I was working on this project. What I'm interested in, the new project I'm embarking on now and in the research that I'll be presenting today, looks at the kinds of governments, the types of governments major powers are more likely to come into confrontation with, and the types of governments they're more likely to prefer. Initially, I thought of this question in terms of foreign-imposed regime change. Which kind of regimes are imposed? Which kinds of regimes are deposed? But as I thought about the question more, I realized it was a lot broader than foreign-imposed regime change, because you may have instances in which you see major powers coercing governments to change their policies, but not necessarily intervening to overthrow those governments. So when would we expect a higher likelihood of conflict between major powers and these governments? And they tend to be governments in weaker states. Well, if we look at public attention with respect to military intervention, it waxes and wanes, and it pretty much follows the success and failure of military interventions. As they increasingly fail, the public becomes less interested in them. As the success rate increases, the public becomes more interested in them and more supportive of them. But from an academic perspective, military intervention is a persistent phenomenon. It's something that doesn't go away, whether or not the public opposes or supports it or really pays attention to it at all. We see presidents doing it time and time again in the United States, even with or without domestic support. So, for example, in Libya, the American public was largely opposed to that intervention, yet Obama intervened anyway. Obama was elected, actually, as a president to end foreign intervention, not to start new ones. So I'm always interested in these patterns that sort of surprise our own expectations about what should happen when we see these sort of persistent phenomenons despite public opposition. And I think intervention is one of those categories that it persists despite what people may think about it.